Let me welcome you, brothers and sisters, wherever you are, to another interesting and fascinating edition of conversations around the moral call. That moral clarity that emphasizes the need for those who are called to be in ministry, those who are called to cater to the needs and aspirations of the broken, the weak, the meek, those who are called, sanctified, and set aside to be the voice of conscience in society, those who are called to speak to the issues of human limitations, the issues that has to do with the failure of leadership. And in the midst of challenges and difficulties, we are reminded time and again throughout the pages of history that it was always men and women of conscience uh, that came together to be able to speak when the need was there to speak. They stood up for the poor, the weak, and the meek. And this is why Jesus himself declared it quite clearly. He declares it in the book of Luke that he was set aside, that he was called, and he came to speak, to proclaim liberation for the poor, for the meek, for the weak. That was the purpose of a sacred mission. Well, today we are going to be speaking to issues of relevance, issues of national concern in this short moment in time that we have together. And as we indicated to you in the promo, that we're going to be talking today with two distinguished moral leaders from the diaspora community to speak to the burning issues in Liberia, the silence of the church, uh, the need for the church as it is recognized in keeping with our ethical responsibility to be the voice in the wilderness, the voice of conscience, to speak to issues of national and international concern. The need for moral clarity in Liberia. And we indicated to you in our announcement that we're going to be bringing in two great men from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Liberian War created mayhem. It led to the death of thousands of our fellow compatriots, our mothers, our sisters, our brothers, our neighbors, and many fled in different parts. Some became refugees, some were displaced. And the story goes on and on. We graduated from that in 2003 with the emphasis that genuine elections were held. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf came to leadership. And we all know the rest is history. And for the sake of time, we will not be able to dive in all of the scenarios that have occurred since the ascendancy of Ellen Johnson Sirleaf to where we are today. As we speak, the nation is bruised. The nation is challenged. The nation is suffering. There's a cry in the wilderness. And if there's a weeping prophet, if we go back to history and to the Bible, then of course there must be men of conscience and men of God who will come today to talk to us about what's prevailing. And I was speaking to a scholar just yesterday, the day before. The moral question he raised to me was, where is the church? What is happening to Liberia? Where is the Council of Churches? What is happening to the Lutheran Church, the Methodist Church, the Presbyterian, the Catholic Church? Where is Bishop Francis, the late? He said he will be rolling in his grave in the midst of the anarchy and the fear and the human degradation we see happening in Liberia today. Some of us thought we have graduated from this. Liberia was on the path to equity, to justice, to equality. to improving the way of life of the people, to making sure that people have water and sanitation, that children could go to school, and people could live not in fear. But here we are again. Thanks for joining us. If you're just coming to the broadcast, this is the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network. And today we're coming to you from both sides of the United States, but both sides of Pennsylvania. I'm speaking to you from Western Pennsylvania. The two distinguished colleagues who are joining us are coming from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Let me bring in Reverend Dr. Moses Suah Dennis, and also bring in Apostle Nat Miller. The two colleagues joining me are from the Liberia Ministers Association. My understanding, and I remember quite vividly from the very onset of the Liberia Ministers Association, I did work with Pastor Dennis in Philadelphia then. Pastor Dennis happens to be the current chair of the board of this particular group. And Nat Miller happens to be now the president of the Ministers Association in the Delaware Valley. And that I'm certainly sure they will be able to talk to us on the prevailing circumstances we have in Liberia. And then the question for me is, what is the Diaspora Church? The Diaspora Church doing? Also, Reverend Dr. Dennis serves in the capacity of the Liberia Ministerial Alliance in North America. So he's wearing two hats today. But gentlemen, welcome to the show. How is Philadelphia this morning? Let's begin with Dr. Dennis. How is Lansdowne? How is Fifth Emmanuel Lutheran Church?
Well, Philly is good. East Lansdowne is okay. We are still in winter, but it's a beautiful day with sunshine. And I always like to be grateful and thankful for each day that comes by with all of the blessings of life God has created for our sustenance. So it is well here in Philly.
That's wonderful. And the question to you, Brother Miller, how is it with your soul? The nation is troubled, and you are far away from home, but you are a moral leader, and you represent a bunch of ministers in Philadelphia, the Delaware Valley. How is it with your soul, brother? How well are you coping? How's Philadelphia this morning?
Hey, thank you, Dr. Quade, for just the opportunity to have a conversation this morning. And a special greetings to you, Dr. Dennis. It's a blessing to be alive.
Yeah.
Like Doc said, we have at least about 35-ish degree here, but the sun is shining. And indeed, this is the day that the Lord has made, and our purpose is to rejoice in spite of what is good on the hand and be glad in it. So we're thankful. Family is doing well. I was out this morning doing the job of a father, getting kids to school and other things. And I had to be here to have a conversation concerning the nation that we love. Though far in terms of aero miles, but quite close in terms of heart and spirit and what we trust that God is supposed to do in that nation. So maybe far distant, but in terms of the heartbeat of where we are and what we're feeling, we're quite in the midst of it, I can assure you.
That's correct. And so the moral question to the both of you, men of God, where is the nation headed? What has become of us? How immoral we've become and how wicked we've become. If you listen to the stories, it goes back as far as Matthew Innes, Ibata Yensua, Gifty Lamar, and Princess Cooper. The list goes on and on. And all of these mysterious killings that are taking place in Liberia, and of most recent, the daughter of the former Chief Justice, Gloria Musu Scott. Uh, Ladies in the street wearing black again, demanding for justice and rights. Are we headed on that narrow road again? To what? Another violence? Pastor Dennis?
Um, Let me just piggyback a little bit on what the Apostle Miller said. You know, we had an event here last Saturday, and one of the statements that was made, we can be far away, but make our presence felt. And I think that is very important. Our hearts in Liberia, and in a very practical way, mothers, aunties, cousins, nephews, nieces, they are all home. All of us cannot be in the United States. So the news from Liberia can be overwhelming, can be discouraging, but as you have asked, I think we can and are making our presence felt through, first and foremost, as people of faith, through prayers to God. But as we know in the States, as it has been said in recent time, we have to go past prayer and take actions like the women are taking. And obviously, there is a government a process that needs to be followed in terms of these killings that we are hearing about. And they have to be investigated, because if they are not investigated, if people are not held accountable, then the question that you are asking become relevant. Where are we going if there cannot be redress, if there cannot be the rule of law, if there cannot be accountability, if there cannot be justice, then we are heading down the wrong road, which we do not hope and pray for. So I think the women in the streets are doing the right thing to ask for recourse, and I think it is the responsibility of the authority, whether the city or the national government, to provide answers to our people. That's what government is for, to steer the affairs of the state, to manage, to secure peace, to secure justice, and to make sure that lawlessness, I mean, law abides, not the lawlessness, because in the absence of government, there is lawlessness, but you institute government so that the law should be obeyed. So the women are doing the right thing, and we know when our Liberian women stand up, things happen. And we do know from the Civil War that they led the charge, and I'm glad at this critical mass they are doing the same thing. So we are praying for them, and we are here to make our voices heard. That we are concerned, like every Liberian, and we need to know why these things are happening and who is responsible for them and who is to stop them, because that's the reason we have government, and government need to redress the people about these concerns. So I do not think we are going to go down the path that we've been before. I think as Liberian, we've had enough from bloodshed, so no more bloodshed, but at the same time, people have to be held accountable. And if our government cannot do it, it is my understanding that Jerome Berger, who is part of the international community, knows him. He has a voice, and I think they have gotten involved in this process about this most recent development. So there is hope that things are happening, and we hope that we can all know what's going on and people be held accountable for some of the things you enumerated in terms of deaths that are happening in Liberia.
Brother Miller?
Yes, sir. Well, Doc is on course when he talks about the fact that authorities must function, government must work. People are in leadership, in essence, to exert influence. That's what leadership is. And the fact that our mothers and sisters and aunts are getting up to speak, it shows leadership. Leadership for us here is not necessarily position. And in many circles, it takes one group of people, and I think the women are doing what they've done before, standing up for the soul of the nation. And that's something we want to encourage. We will need answers. And so whether it's the youth, the women, or leadership from, pastoral authority, clip there. I believe, what they are doing so that government work. In other parts of the world, government is meant to work for the people through her institutions and through the different setups that she has. So I concur with Doc that uh, truth must be told, um, justice must be found in all of this, and leadership must work. My addition to that is leadership will come from anywhere if those who are in authority don't speak, because God has a way of nurturing His people to result. You mentioned through history a couple of leaders that stood up. They were not people in position, as it were, but they were people who had moral conscience, and the compass of that particular season and time fell on them, and it stood up. And so I encourage, our mothers and us here as leaders, also pastors, not just praying, but speaking truth to power, as it were, to rise up. And from our point of view, from our vantage point, God can use any and either of those to bring to bear what He wants in this time and season for our people. Yeah.
And the reality of the matter is that if I may piggyback on that, the Council of Churches play a pivotal role even during the time of the war, the period of the war, negotiating the peace and working along the way throughout the sub-region and the whole world. What has become of the voice of conscience? That's one. And even those of us who are here in this part of the world, we do have considerable influence. Is the Ministers Association doing anything in the direction of bearing some pressure from this side of the world? When Washington speaks, people listen in Liberia. We know that. All right. We got to a point that George Bush said Taylor must go, and Taylor left. Where are we in terms of the role that those of us within the diaspora community must play, and stop thinking that, well, this is the Liberian problem, it's thousands of miles away from us. And if we do not play a proactive role, making sure that we can bear considerable pressure on the leadership in Liberia to bring about the change that is necessary. Because I say it in the sense that these killings that we're talking about, they are not things that have just occurred within the period of a month, 2 or 3. Some have gone beyond to over 3, going to 4 years. And yet there are no findings. There are no international forensic update in terms of what happened to people like Suah, the auditors, and others. And this continued to be a persistent theme. Every time we wake up in the morning, if you go on social media or if you read the papers, there is a dead body lying somewhere in some part of Liberia.
Yeah, I'm glad you preface your question that when Washington speaks, the world, as it may be, listens. And the last time I had an opportunity to be in Washington was with Bishop Cotto, who is the immediate he who just left the Council of Churches as president, and we were there meeting the president of the National Council of Churches to advocate on behalf of Liberians when it comes to their status. And thankfully, the Fairness Act was passed under the former president, Donald Trump, and Liberians today have access to citizenship. So what are we doing? We are here to, like you said, not to exert pressure in that sense, but to be partners with the Liberian Council of Churches. And that's the whole idea the Ministerial Alliance was formed, so that we have a national umbrella for our churches to come together in the diaspora to do things that needs to be done. And like I said, the last time Bishop Cotto was here about 3 years ago, we were in DC, and we did something that worked for our people. The current leader of the National Council of Churches was in the States, but we never had opportunity to meet. But when I was there a year ago, I visited the council's office, and we engaged them, letting them know that we are here to be partner with them. There are things they are not able to say or do, we can say and do. But there are things we on this side cannot do, they have to say and do. So in such a time, my call would be that, I'm very sure they have plans. They are trying to get themselves out there, but they say sometimes silence means concern. So if they don't speak out, it means that they will be seen to be endorsing what is happening. So I call on them to, speak to this issue, because this is an issue now that is gaining international attention. Like I said, Jerome Vera and other people are now, beginning to look into this more recent killing that you referenced. So we are not on the ground; they are there, and we call on them, to be able to speak out like they did when the video came up about, about some threats that were being orchestrated for the election, and the Council of Churches spoke that that video was not authentic. It did not represent what Liberia looked like. So in the same way, we called on them with this most recent development, as the women are in the street, to stand with the women and to let their voices be heard as to what the thing is happening. The truth be told, we must know why this is happening, because if people don't know what is happening, then you will increase the anxiety. Then people, the wrong information will be out there, and then people will follow the wrong information instead of the facts. So we ask them to, ask the government to put out the facts about what's happening and who's responsible for it, so that those people can be held accountable. So as I started by saying, we are in communication with them. But like I said, there are things they have to do. They are on the ground, and there are things we can do when we have to do it from this end. And you can trust that this is part of what we are doing here, what we are able to do from here, and we will seek other platforms to do more from this end. But for now, we are really hoping that they will step out and to do what they can do from on the ground. Like Apostle Miller, maybe he has a word or two to add to what I've said, but that's my response to that, Reverend Zizi.
Yeah, I mean, so even yesterday we had a meeting, and our conversation was even in this direction of what could be done for us as ministers here. We honestly bear the legacy of things that are happening there. The truth is that wherever you go, whatever part of the world, what we were birthed into has a way of holding you, and we are doing our utmost best to break out of that cycle. And that's why the platform that Dr. Dennis is talking about, Lamana, is really meant to have a cohesion between ministers in the diaspora, so that these are the very times that the point you are making about Washington speaking, it gave us that voice and that platform. And I can assure you, he has been doing his utmost best with support of a couple of chapters of our local Ministers Association, so that we can have that level of voice, because leadership is not just influence, but in terms of your voice. And so those who are nearest to the issue in terms of proximity would do us favor by speaking, so that we also are able to amplify their voices. Because if we have mixed messages, for example, we don't have to send our own people to find out what's going on. We should be able to trust our colleagues that this is what we are doing. Help us through this process. Who can you call upon? How can we do that? And that's the kind of networking and synergy that Lamana have been trying to push over the last 5-6 years. And by God's grace, we're going to get there. But just the fact that we've been communicating, we've been talking, we've been connecting and urging. If Dr. Dennis were to tell you the amount of attempts that we've been making from last year, we were talking about the bicentennial celebration, all the way to other very milestone and important events, to make sure that we have that communication line open, to make sure that we have that kind of camaraderie, so that these things are seamlessly addressed. We will not even have time to go through that. But he's a man of perseverance, and we are still backing him locally here from our vantage point in Philadelphia. We're giving him all the support that we need. Again, the kind of legacy that we are building on, for example, most of which are not the best. All of us don't have to speak. The reason why I'm here, because he wants me to be here to support him. I wouldn't have done this to speak nationally if you were not around, because I want to support that structure so that it become permanent, and then we can have voices that speak for all of us in a way that others will hear and know that these guys are doing something and these guys are one. And that's what we are doing. We are supporting locally as LMADV, the efforts of Lamana, to make sure that just the phrase that you had that when Washington speaks, so that when we as Liberian ministers in the diaspora speak, others will hear and know that we are one unit, and we are speaking on behalf of a nation that is bleeding, like you said, that is suffering. And because morality is going out of the door, morality has to do with principles. It has to do with what we're standing for. Who's supposed to be the voice of conscience? Who's supposed to be the ones who's supposed to speak in that direction so that these core values and principles are not thrown out of the door or totally decimated, but they are fully held for the next generation. And we see that, we know that, and we're doing our very best to stand up to that. But we need the partnership of our colleagues on the ground that will give us that gravitas and give us our voice also in these places where we are serving.
And Reverend Zizek, before you move on to the next piece, I think I shared with you this article. It is titled Lamana Seeks Partnership for Development in Liberia. We've really been collaborating with the Council of Churches. This was the Basa Tanya. We were able to send message that was published. A representative read our statement on national TV in the presence of the whole country. And so we've been doing our utmost best to partner with our fellow ministers in Liberia. But again, they are on the ground. There are things only them can do, and we are on this side. There are things we can do from this side. So that's why we are doing. We are doing everything we are able to do.
Well, if you just joined us, this is the Mora Call on the Christian Vision Broadcasting Network. We have two distinguished guests joining us from Philadelphia. They are officials of the Liberia Ministers Association in the Delaware Valley and the Liberia Ministerial Alliance in North America. It's good to have the both of you here, and I'm hoping that we can do this in series as we go along. The next time when we do and have this conversation, we're going to have an opportune time to be able to open the lines that people can call if they want to make an inquiry. But it's actually a wonderful experience to have the both of you here today. And because we are pressed with time, I will let the both of you give closing statements as we just near the time as we wrap up this particular program today. Let's begin with Dr. Dennis.
Definitely, we should work towards a regular time. If it's weekly, every other week, or monthly, that we can have this engagement, a conversation with you and with our people back home. But for today, I'm very pleased that you were able to call our attentions to have our voices heard about the concerns that many Liberians back home and in the diaspora are concerned about. We believe every measure should be taken to avoid the escalation of uncertainty, of violence, because this year is very critical for Liberia, an election year, and we want to make sure the focus is on the election, no distractions, so that our people who have had enough already of the past uncertainties, war, violence, poverty, will not have to, go back to that place, but we think of the future that we all believe is for Liberia. To quote the words of our gospel musician Maron Cassell, Liberia will rise, she will prosper in Africa, yea, the world. We believe that is the future we look forward to. We don't want to go back to the dark days. And so we hope and pray that the government, the church, and other civic organizations will focus on the future of Liberia development and progress, and anything that will hinder that should be arrested and should be, addressed properly, so that the focus should be on the future, having a free and transparent election, and sending our children back to school, colleges, universities, so that they can put their best foot forward to be the men and women that will build Liberia for generations to come. And that is our hope, and that is our prayer. And we in the diaspora, that's what we stand for. Liberians in the diaspora are doing well because the new system and structure that will guide us into the right way. And I will end with this statement, Reverend Zizek. As I always said, leadership is about bringing the best out of your people. Good leadership, that is. And we hope that that's what we will hear from Liberia. We want to hear about the latest invention, the latest innovation, the latest talent that we are discovering that will be nurture for the international community that we are part of, not things that will say the worst about our country. That's not what we want to see, and that's not what we want to hear. And we believe that that's not what Liberia stands for. The Lone Star State. We have always been a light, a bright spot, a hope for the whole continent, and let's work towards that. And we urge our leaders to have that mindset. So thank you. I will look forward to having a regular time with you as we work the time and schedule out so that we can speak more to this. Like you said, we don't have enough time to say that all that can be said, but at least for now, I want to say to our people, we love them. Shalom, peace, and may the right gracious hands of Almighty God continue to guide and steer our leaders as they steer and guide the affairs of the nation. Thank you.
Apostle Miller?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Zuse, and well done, Dr. Dennis. I really do want to enter the message of hope as well. Many times we as ministers have been accused of being too hopeful. I think you can't have more of that. A caution to leadership: nothing is done in the dark. Whatever you do in the dark will come to light. We're in a very tiny global village now.
Yeah.
And so if the authorities don't rise, God will still raise up leaders who may not have position, but it will still have places of influence. And having said that, I want to leave with a scripture I was running through this morning. The Bible said, let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. Happy is he that hath the God of Jacob for his help, whose hope is in the Lord. As ministers, we believe that our hope is in the Lord. The truth is, we preach about the kingdom here so vociferously. And as leadership fails, God is our hope. And we're not just speaking that as matter of words, but also we put that into action. And so our brethren there, those who are listening to us and who are in the heat of what is happening back home, we're praying with you, but we're also doing our best. Let's keep hope alive. Kudos to the sisters that are raising up their voices. We're praying for you. Continue to do that. Justice will prevail. Liberia will rise again. Peace will reign.
Amen.
And that nation will fulfill her divine destiny. Come what may, nothing is going to stop it. And that is what we stand for. That's what we believe. And may God be our help in that direction. Thank you for the time. We look forward to further conversation. God bless you.
Yeah, and we want to thank the two distinguished gentlemen for joining us today. We want to assure Liberia and Liberians, wherever you are, it's going to take a collective effort on the part of all of us to know that whatever affects one affects all.
Yep.
To come to that realization that Liberia is all that we have. And it was not a crime if you were born there, or you have a lineage, or you have a connection. Liberia is a beautiful place. If we can just imagine what is it that we need to do together to make Liberia whole, to make Liberia what it ought to be, to create opportunities for the young, those who hold the future, to create opportunities for the Zogos, as you may call them, those who are traumatized, the ex-combatants, who are now giving an opportunity to be actually demobilized and reoriented into civil society. The enormous challenges that lie ahead in making Liberia what it ought to be, that we all can live in peace and harmony. We may not agree, even as we are here in this great country. Many of us have different ideological perspectives. We have different orientations, but we live in this country because there is the rule of law, where everybody is equal before the law.
Yep.
And that is what we need in Liberia, looking at our past, looking at the mistakes we made, looking at where we've come through the crucibles of war. Thousands of our fellow compatriots, men, women, children, the elderly were all killed in the name of freedom, a hard-earned freedom. And the very Bible reminds us that it is through the shedding of blood that people come to redemption. We've passed that stage. But we cannot continue to share blood persistently, where the vulnerable and the weak have no justice. And it becomes incumbent upon all of us, irrespective of where you are, at home, abroad, to begin to realize that our common patrimony is the country called Liberia, and that the need we come together. And that's the intent we have on this program. And we come here each time when we have conversations with scholars, with teachers, with pastors, with ministers, with people who are greatly conscious and will bring to us the voice of wisdom as we have today. We want to thank you so much for being a part of the program. We want to thank Pastor Dennis for joining us. We thank Brother Miller for joining us. We will invite the both of you from time to time. Pastor Dennis is a part of this creation. He's not a stranger. And it's a great pleasure to meet you, Brother Miller. We want to thank our audience for joining us today. And God willing, we'll be back again. The conversation you have concerning the social activist, Councilor Verdia. Councilor Verdia will be on our show this evening at 7 o'clock on the Justice Forum when we look at Liberia in its totality and the challenges that it has and those who are abusing their authority. Until then, when we come back again, I want to thank you so much. From Western PA, my colleagues out there in Philadelphia, Pastor Dennis and Apostle Miller. Thanks for coming, guys. We'll see you again. Take care, everybody.
Shalom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Shalom, peace. Bye-bye.